Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. This is our weekly show, Talking Point, and I'm Parul Chandra. With me today is Editor-in-Chief of StratNews Global, Nitin Gokhale, and the High Commissioner-designate of Australia, Parul. Welcome to StratNews Global, Mr. Parul. It's been quite a beginning for you in New Delhi. I think you were here for about just 3 weeks when the lockdown happened.
Well, there's nothing like a crisis to steepen your learning curve, but we seem to be doing well. And even if for the moment that's more focused on repatriating Australians and perhaps deepening the relationship.
Let me now come to an important question regarding your country, and this is about the containment of the pandemic. Australia has been quite successful, unlike many countries, the US, say France, Italy, Spain. So what do you attribute the success to?
I think like India, Australia took quick, early, decisive action to battle the COVID crisis. And we've had some success, but of course there's no cause for complacency. We closed our borders to Chinese travellers from the 1st of February. About a week later, we also closed it to travellers who'd been in Italy, South Korea, and some of those other countries affected. And then I think on the 22nd of March or thereabouts, we closed our borders to all but citizens and permanent residents. So that's probably easier when you're an island in the South Pacific than elsewhere. But the fact is we also used our shared democratic governance systems to persuade and encourage our citizens to adhere to the rules around social distancing as well as restrictions on movement, both of which clearly are key to trying to defeat this terrible disease.
That's right. In fact, High Commissioner, you also delivered a lecture to India's National Defence College recently, maybe a virtual lecture. But an important point you made there was about the enormous role that India may be playing in the post-COVID-19 world. And you also spoke about how all nations must get together to overcome this crisis. What were your main talking points as far as India's role is concerned?
Well, I think India has shown a remarkable leadership through this crisis, whether it's in assisting with medical supplies to neighbouring countries, whether it's been leading the SAARC group of nations in coordinating their response, or indeed in Prime Minister Modi's role in initiating and his contribution at the G20 Leaders Conference. What we've seen is increasingly India taking a more globally leadership role. And I think, as I've said previously, they're able to do that a bit better than some other major powers because they have less baggage that they carry with them. But I'm one of those who believe that leadership role is only going to grow post-COVID. And I think, to be blunt about it, I think Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Jaishankar have taken India's global engagement and leadership to a high new level.
You're right, absolutely. And in that context, I wanted to shift the focus a little bit from COVID-19 crisis to geopolitics. And if I read your points that were given out from your lecture, and of course we know Australia's stand on this, on the Indo-Pacific, both Canberra and New Delhi believe that Southeast Asia is central to Indo-Pacific, the idea of Indo-Pacific. And do you think that is only going to strengthen as we overcome this pandemic and this crisis that the pandemic has brought about?
I think the relationship between our two countries, but also across the region, will only continue to go in one direction. That's largely because India is forecast to emerge from this crisis in positive growth. That means that trading countries around the world will continue to beat a path to her door. But that matched with the increasing leadership that she's showing not only in the region but globally, means that it's going to be incredibly important. We know the significance of the Indian and Pacific Oceans in terms of their economic power. We know the sort of countries that top 5 countries over the next decade will be in that region. that means there's only one direction for this relationship to go. And India and Australia share big coasts with the Indian Ocean. That gives us not only a say in what goes on, but more importantly, a responsibility to maintain it under rules and norms, as opposed to allowing it to be threatened by others.
That's right. In fact, that also brings me to the Quad arrangement. It has grown incrementally, even if incrementally it has grown over the past couple of years, from official level discussions to some ministerial level deliberations. Where do you see the Quad going? You did mention India-Australia relationship growing better and better. It is at a point where it has been strengthened for some time. But taking it in the context of Quad, what is your assessment going forward?
Look, I think the Quad's been a useful forum to coordinate approaches on critical issues affecting like-minded democracies around cybersecurity, maritime security, and the like. And I think the fact that it was elevated to ministerial level last year is simply a pat on the back or an endorsement of the value of that forum. But going forward, I think it too is going to play its role. I often quote a speech by External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, who was commenting on the way in which the world has changed and continues to change because of nationalism, because of competition amongst nations. And what we're seeing is a lot more what he described as plurilateralism, where relationships like the Quad, along with SECA and others, are going to be important in shaping our regions of the world.
Yes, Parul, I think you had some other questions.
Yes, High Commissioner Parul, we spoke about the Quad and also the Indo-Pacific. Now, it is widely believed that both these constructs are actually aimed at containing China. In fact, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who was in New Delhi in January this year, said it in as many words when he spoke at the Raisina dialogue. He said that it's meant to counter China. Would you agree with his views?
Well, don't take my word for it, because we of course know of Prime Minister Modi's role in putting renewed focus on the Indo-Pacific. And at that very same conference at Raisina earlier this year, the Indian Foreign Secretary made the point that this was a construct of people from within this region. It was a geographic reality, and it was not something that was aimed at any country. And Australia is very comfortable with that, because we believe the Indo-Pacific is not just a geographic reality, it's also an economic reality, because of the ongoing importance that it has given the trade that goes through the region, and will continue to shape the global economy for decades to come. In fact, I think the other thing that I enjoyed that the Foreign Secretary said was that it was a much better phrase than Asia-Pacific, which had too many colonial underpinnings.
That's true, of course. He actually put a good sheen to it from why we changed from Asia-Pacific to Indo-Pacific. That's right.
It convinced me.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, Parul.
One more question. Now, Australia has been quite keen to be part of the Malabar exercise now that we talk about the Indian Ocean region. And India has been hesitant about it. Is there any likelihood of Australian participation in this year's Malabar exercise?
Well, we're happy to be a participant in any exercise, but they, of course, depend on those countries who run them. I think what Malabar might slightly overshadow, though, is the strength and the deepening of the defence relationships between Australia and India. And we've seen a quadrupling of engagements since 2014. And AusIndex, which occurred last year, is the biggest defence engagement by Australia with India. And it was incredibly complex, and it involved submarine serials as well as P8 maritime aviation exercises over the Bay and Bengal. So I think our defence relationship is particularly strong. It's not about any particular exercise. It's about it's about a deep and broad relationship that I have to say, if I can deliver at the end of my term a trade and investment relationship is strong, I'll be very happy.
That's right. But let me move away from the bilateral and a little bit of Indo-Pacific and Quad And let us look at the after effects of COVID-19, or as we have been saying on StratNews Global, the Chinese virus. Australia has been very forthright in saying that we must investigate the origins of the virus, and also, held or hold rather those responsible for it accountable. And because of that, there has been, as you know, there has been a pushback from China. There have been a lot of aggressive posturing and a rhetoric coming out from Beijing. Has that affected, or will it affect Beijing and Canberra relationship, knowing that it is a very deep and a very wide relationship, both in terms of economic engagement and otherwise?
Well, if you let me take that in two parts. Firstly,
Yes.
Prime Minister Modi himself at the G20 Leaders Summit raised the need to strengthen the World Health Organization. And I note that India is about to take a leadership role within the organisation very shortly. I think it's prudent, if you want to keep any organisation up to date and effective, that after a pandemic of the magnitude that we've seen unfold in the world, that you stop and spend time to reflect on how we can ensure that next time, and regrettably there always is a next time, we can better prevent or mitigate such a disease. And that's why Australia's argued that there should be an independent review at an appropriate time to look at issues like the genesis and the spread of the disease, the way in which different countries have handled it, whether sufficient information was provided to those countries about each other's activities during the pandemic, and of course the engagement of the World Health Organization during the global response to it. Now, clearly not everybody likes that idea, but at a time when the world is hopefully coming through a crisis, what we need is cooperation to strengthen our global institutions, not battles that seek to deny transparency. Now, in relation to China and Australia, we've had a mutually beneficial relationship for a very long time. As our Prime Minister says, it's not a one-way street, but it has been beneficial to both of us. But it is not acceptable to threaten economic coercion in response to a call for an independent and transparent review of a body that's designed to maintain the world's health. This is a time, particularly when we need to be promoting cooperation, if not the words of John Lennon in Love amongst the world, not promoting discord and not trying to cover things up.
Very well put, High Commissioner. In fact, that brings me to the challenges that you may have faced. As you said, you've just arrived in India about maybe a couple of months ago, 3 weeks before the lockdown in India started. But one of the challenging tasks that you may have had, you and your colleagues in the High Commission, was to repatriate or extricate Australians back home from here and from all over the country in India, so enormously big country like Australia. How do you manage that? What are the challenges that you faced that time?
Well, the challenges are particularly difficult. Firstly, the long distance flight that's involved, and of course, by the stage we had the lockdown, most countries were not allowing transiting aircraft. So normally you come to Australia either on direct Air India flights or you transit through the Middle East or through Singapore. Well, both of those options had gone. We struggled initially to get some airlines to be prepared to do so, and indeed our first repatriation flights were organised privately by citizens stranded in India, and they provide a number of flights. But as of last weekend, we've had 9 flights out that have evacuated something like 3,000 citizens. We have a major plane leaving tomorrow with another 300, and then later in the week we have 3 Qantas flights which will again evacuate people. So you'll see what we describe as the Flying Kangaroo, a privately owned company, of course. It's not a national carrier, but it will always be regarded as part of Australia. And so we continue to work on those issues, and we are doing our very best to get particularly the vulnerable and stranded short-term tourists back to Australia. It's not made easier in part because of India's flight ban. We can't fill those planes on the way out to India with passengers, which means that people travelling back the other way, of course, are paying double the price because there's only one paying leg.
Yeah, that's true. But is there, there is a lot of demand from Indians stranded in Australia. Is there a sort of a lot of apprehensions amongst students, Indian students studying in Australia? Is there some kind of a tension there among the student community, Indian student community in Australia?
Well, I think the good news that whether you're an Indian citizen stranded in Australia or whether you're an Indian student stranded in Australia, you know because of our record in battling COVID that your health is going to be okay. So at least they don't have that stress which exists in so many other parts of the world. Obviously, every country has been affected, had its economy affected by the COVID battle. And just as I've admired Prime Minister Modi's efforts to both battle the disease and also mitigate its impact against the most vulnerable, the challenge in Australia has been how do we emerge from the COVID crisis to restore our economy without allowing the beast back into the room. And our economy has suffered. We have seen unemployment rise. We have seen businesses close as they've closed here. That's had an impact upon part-time work, which has affected a number of international students, particularly Indian international students. But what's pleasing is that both the Australian government has provided assistance to our university sector, and those university sectors, and I'm speaking to Vice Chancellors most days, are providing practical assistance to Indian and other students across our university sectors. So if there are Indian students in Australia who are feeling as though they don't have enough money or don't have enough food, I'm satisfied from where I sit here in Delhi, having spoken to the universities, that at each of their universities there is assistance available if they ask for it. And I noticed last week one of our states introduced relief grants of 1,100 Australian dollars, about 55,000 rupees, for international students in its state, and I suspect we'll see some more of those from states across the country.
That's very good to know, High Commissioner. On that note, I must say that we've covered a fair bit of ground here. Hopefully, we'll all come out of this lockdown and there will be an occasion for us to meet physically face to face. But until the next time, thank you very much for your time and thank you for being on this program on StratNews Global.
And it's a pleasure. I'm only surprised I wasn't asked about the upcoming India-Australia Test series.
We'll ask you when we meet in person.
Will it happen?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.